says this church was first built as a Union church west of its present location in 1880, near what was the home of Daniel Hackart. In 1881, it was dedicated as a Methodist church. In 1884, the church building was moved during a feud among the congregation in the middle of the night to its present site on Fred Chrisman's ranch on Deadman Creek. The logs were covered with clapboards and painted white, and a small steeple was added at that time. In 1889, the Methodists abandoned the church, and for 3 years no services were held. In 1893, Reverend Franklin Moore took charge of the church, and Presbyterian Church was organized. He continued as the Reverend until the early 1900s, somewhere around 1913. There is also record of a Reverend W.H. Sherman who sponsored Bible study and Sunday school meeting in the private homes and schoolhouse. Also, a Reverend Strait and Reverend Hall were ministers here in the 1900s. The church continued as a Presbyterian church for several years until it became non-denominational. Others who ministered here for shorter periods of time, from approximately 1913 to 1938, were Reverend Cecil Bear, Reverend Clifton, Reverend Parsons, Reverend Milnes, Reverend Young, Reverend Reiser, Reverend Holliers, Reverend Heineke, and Reverend Elmer Parker. Reverend Marcus Grether and Reverend Herb Grether conducted services in the early 1950s, followed by Reverend Donald Watkins with Mountain Missions, then Reverend Phil Dunford, Reverend Daniel Arnsmeyer, and Reverend Tim Arnsmeyer, Pastor Steve Ratzlaff, Pastor Ken Hall, and Pastor Richard Grove. The church also took great pride in ordaining its own minister, Pastor Bob Spence. A number of people have been baptized in the church in the earlier years. In the earlier years of the church, some insisted on immersion when Deadman Creek carried more water. A cradle roll that dated back to the early 1920s hung on the back wall of the church with the names of some of the children who had been baptized. It was destroyed in the fire of November 2003. A picture of the original now hangs in its place. The first burial in a cemetery was that of a soldier killed by Indians in the late 1860s and buried near the stage station. A prospector who was found shot on Upper Dead Man was buried in the late 1870s. Across from the Chrisman Ranch buildings, not far from the church, a third was that of Mr. Berry, who was shot in a quarrel about 1885. The first 3 burials resulted from shootings. It was long the boast of old-timers that Virginia Dale was so healthful a place that in order to be an up-to-date community, it was necessary to shoot a man to start a cemetery. Services were held, to the best of our knowledge, each Sunday morning up until the late 1940s. In the late 1950s, services were changed and held only once a month, and moved to evening services. Services are now held the second Sunday of each month at 4 p.m. The church has been maintained and cared for by the congregation of the Virginia Dale community. The congregation has been as few as 4 to 6 in the late 1970s and as large as 60 to 70 in the 1940s. As large as 60 to 70. Our regular congregation now is about 25. An arsonist fire destroyed the church on the night of November 15th, 2003. With the help of close to 500 cash donors, the area businesses who generously donated building supplies, countless hours spent by the church members and volunteers who lent their skills and time, a new church was built to a replica of the old church, and services were held again on March 14th, 2004. Just 4 months after the old church burned, the arsonist received a sentence of 9 years for his crime. The first service was a service filled with tears of joy for the blessing of a new church. and tears of sadness for the loss of the beautiful old church that held so many memories of ancestry, good times, and fellowship for all of us. April 4th, 2004, the first wedding was held in the new church. Congratulations, Rick and Liz. Many thanks are due to everyone who helped, and there is no possible way to tell everyone how much we appreciate their help and what it has meant to us. I can't read the last line there because it's blocked by the old nails. Some articles on the church. Historic US 287 church burns to the ground. How sad that some people just can't leave well enough alone. Well, there we are. A real, actual, legitimate Frontier Prairie Church. Or rather, the replica of it, but seems to be pretty close to the original, I would suppose. Arise Rwanda. Baptisms Outreach. More pieces from those original nails and hinges left behind. If memory serves me correctly, that might be Jesus' tomb, perhaps, in Israel. You know, what this building reminds me of, a hateful person destroyed the original church building for I don't know whatever reason, or no reason at all. But it was rebuilt. It was rebuilt, and here it still stands today, where people of no particular Christian denomination gather and worship once a month. That is, I think, an example of what it is to be a Christian, to overcome and to love in spite of being hurt. I mean, you could see. You can walk right in there. Even still to this day. Someone burned down their church. But I can still walk right in there, pray, worship, read the Word. There's plenty of Bibles all throughout. There's no bitterness. There's no anger. No animosity. No hatred. How many centuries have various rulers and emperors and governments, countries, ideologies tried to extinguish Christianity and the teachings of Christ, and they've never succeeded. Not once. From the Colosseums in Rome to communist ideologies that still persist to this day, You know, in China, you have to, if my understanding is correct, you have to have a permit just to have a church, and your sermons have to be pre-seen and approved by the government, especially if you're a Christian church. It was the same way in communist Russia for years. It may still well be the same way. You certainly couldn't during the Third Reich in the 1930s, 1940s. You certainly couldn't have a Christian church back then. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a fine example of that. Powers of this world will never stop the truth that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Nothing will stop that. Nothing will stop his truth. His truth goes marching on indeed.